Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast. I'm really excited today to have on Roy Waldrop. He is the CEO and founder of RJR Controls. They do controls for septic systems, and he's going to tell us all about those, why they use them, how it impacts the industry, and then also we're going to hear some really great business insights from him. So, Roy, welcome to the podcast. So glad to have you on.
Well, thanks for having me.
You founded RJR Controls back in 2020, but give us a little sneak peek of what you did before then and what was the gap that you saw in the market that led you to start building your control panels.
After graduating high school, I joined the U.S. Coast Guard, and I was there for 4.5 years. I was a machinery technician in the Coast Guard. Basically meant we maintained anything electrical, engine, transmissions, outboards, pumps, whatever. And so had a mechanical hands-on training later. Got out of there. I went to work for a John Deere construction dealer in Houston and worked there for about 6 years, and through the shop into parts and back into service as a service writer. Left there, went to work for a generator manufacturer out of Los Angeles, and covered 18 states for them as a regional field service manager.
Wow.
That was up until about 2001. It's right about the time that I started RJR. My dad came out of retirement probably the third or fourth time in 96, and he started, for whatever reason, installing aerobic septic systems. And at the time, aerobic septic had been around since the 50s, and but they really started being required in the mid to late 90s in Texas. And so there was a push for the systems and dependable systems. And there was a manufacturer out of Ohio that Dad was using their systems, and they needed a new control panel manufacturer. And so we sat down and we talked about it, and I was intrigued enough to sit down with some very good guys in the industry and kind of got the idea of what they were doing and what needed to be done and how we could improve it. Basically listening to the installers, listening to the guys that were out there with boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And those are the guys that we wanted to make happy, because if they liked it, then they were going to ask for it.
Yeah.
And that was my reputation. My dad's been an entrepreneur all my life, and he always told me that word of mouth will make or break you. You don't need advertisement. Just do a good job, and that guy will tell somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the thought process on building the business. And we just kept putting it in front of people. And once they got their hands on it, change is hard. Nobody likes change.
Yes.
When the cell phones first came out, I'm telling my age, when microwaves first came, afraid they were going to get radiation. And then the cell phones, and nobody wanted a cell phone because they thought they give you brain damage, And now we carry around an encyclopedia in our pocket. We've grown the market slowly. But like I said, it's not selling the most that I wanted to be known for, is the best. Mm-hmm. And I'll put our system up against anybody out there. I'm not saying that there's not other reputable companies out there that do as well as we do, but we're going to build a product that we're going to stand behind.
And you use that direct feedback from guys who were in the field doing the work every day. And it sounds like that's a real key ingredient of what makes your system better, your controls better, and also it sounds like it just came naturally to you. You already had the skill set and you saw a need and you had the skill set to fix it. So you just filled that need.
Exactly. And it's rare to find a market today that is in demand, that you can jump into with to fill an immediate void. But we were lucky enough that I was in a position that I could start the business. Don't get me wrong, the first 5 to 7 years there were days we were flipping, my wife and I were flipping furniture over, hoping to find spare change. It's tough in the beginning. It is. I'm not going to lie to you. You got to live it, and you got to be hard-headed, too hard-headed to quit.
Exactly. Just not willing to give up no matter what.
No.
I think that's the secret to a lot of success in business is just an unwillingness to give up no matter what.
Right. Then
Yeah,
what this business has really taught me is that it's not that you will have a problem, it's how you fix it. Problems are inevitable in any business. It's just how you handle it, how
yeah,
you respond to it, how you take care of it. That's what people are going to remember.
yeah. The customer will remember that. And then also, when we face problems in business, if we have the mindset that we're going to learn from it and do better and to, what did I do here that I could have done differently next time? And we just see the problems as a way to keep growing. That's where it really gets valuable almost to make
Exactly.
mistakes.
Correct.
Yeah. From your perspective, what are the biggest challenges that septic installers are facing today when it comes to the electrical components and automation?
Today, I think that as long as they're staying with a pretty basic residential system, that they've got it covered. I don't see the installers today having a problem on the residential side. It's when they get into commercial. It's when they make that jump from residential to commercial and they start dealing with the multiple systems and the multiple sets of pumps, and it gets more complicating. And, that's one of the things that I guess Dad started in 96. And through him, I've found a lot of what the industry was missing as far as I'd like to have a little control panel to do this. Nobody had it. And so I would build one and he would say, this is exactly what we need, and then we would go take it to a precaster and they would say, this is great. We get calls all the time, people wanting something like this. And so I just kept my ear to the ground. I'd go out on site, wire stuff up and see what these guys were facing. And I felt that gave me the edge up in the industry. And, by the late 2000s, Dad was doing commercial systems, upwards of 5,000 gallon per day systems. And some of the biggest that some of these agencies had ever permitted. And so yeah, it's just, I taught myself how to logics to do what we wanted to do. And I made some mistakes along the way, but that's how you learn down the road. You just keep plugging at it till you get it right. So we've got solenoid controls. We control multiple pumps. We try to keep it simple. I like to keep it to where it's plug and play, where the installer doesn't have to do too much. And we put components in there that they're familiar with, so instead of letting the logic control the pumps on it, I will put a timer and an alternating relay in that they were used to seeing in, maybe a large residential job. So they understood how to set the pumps or how to operate the pumps instead of having a bunch of buttons you got to push. And that's what they're afraid of. They don't want to push a bunch of buttons on a computer. And that's what I hear all the time. I don't want to do that. That's not my job. I'm out there to put the system in, and I want a timer and I want to keep it mechanical. And so we've tried to keep it that way as much as we could. But the technology today, it's just like I tell all these sales guys that come in here from the manufacturers and they show me all the new stuff, the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi. And it's like, that's great. I would love to be able to use that in our product, but the industry won't bear it. They won't bear the price. And two, the guys putting it in, they're not going to tell you they're scared of it, but they're not going to mess with it.
So the controls that you have right now, are those pretty easy for the guys in the field to just take out of the box and use? Or do they require a lot of training? Do you field a lot of questions directly from installers? How does that kind of training education piece work for your company?
It's just like I tell everybody, my cell phone number is on my business card and I answer my phone. And my philosophy is if you have a problem, I have a problem. So we're going to try to educate those guys over the phone and answer their questions in the easiest way I can. But then again, it's up to me to build a simple system, the KISS theory.
Yeah.
And so most of it is pretty simple, pretty easy. Once they get over the initial fear of looking at the whole box as a whole. We're going to break it down into pieces, and I'm going to say, okay, this part over here does this, and this part over here does that, and let's get this taken care of, and then that taken care of, and just do it in pieces. And then they start to lose fear a little bit, gain a little confidence. But a lot of the setting the timers is coming from the design, because they're all going to be different. Nothing is standard. Depending on a lot of the residential may be standard. If you've got a spray and it's a nighttime spray, it's pretty much simple to set up. But if you're doing drip irrigation, you're going to need to know how much water you need to get rid of in a day, and you need to know how many linear feet of drip tubing you've got. And there's some formulas that calculate in on how long you need to run the pump, and the engineer should either have that information on the design that the installer is using to put the system in, or at least be in communication with the installer to give him that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really a teamwork between that engineer, the installer, your company.
Correct.
Everyone works together.
We work with a lot of the engineers in the state, and they spec our control panels because they know we're going to stand behind it, and we're going to build something that works, and we're going to educate the installer if he's unfamiliar, and it gives them peace of mind as well.
Yeah. If you were talking to a guy who's a new installer, what would you say is the most common mistake you see them making? If you could just give them one piece of advice as they get started with the installation, with the controls, what would that be?
Probably they should take a little more care in how they wire the system up and the way they make connections, wiring connections, and sealing things properly, because you're creating methane gas, and a lot of times you've got chlorine gas and everything, and it will end up back in the control panel eventually, regardless of how well you try to seal it off. And that's corrosive. And you see it a lot at the tank level, more so than the control panel. But I've seen junction boxes full of water and wiring not sealed, so your wires get exposed to the water. That's probably the biggest problem that we see repetitively, is that they don't seal the junction boxes off, or they don't seal, use watertight connections on when they make their wiring connections.
Yeah, that's really solid advice. So that'll save people a lot of problems down the road.
I mean, I've seen systems with corrosive wiring within the warranty period. And they go out there and they look at it and they go, I don't understand how this happens. And I said, well, you didn't seal the wire nuts, or you didn't seal the junction box, and you got moisture in, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So your panels use the NEMA 4X enclosures. Can you explain to our audience why that specific rating is non-negotiable for long-term reliability in the septic environment?
We are a UL 5088 panel shop. And so there's a misconception between NEMA and UL ratings. They coincide, so all the numbers mean the same thing. And, the NEMA 4X basically is dust-proof, rain-tight. It's protection from, splashed water, hose-directed water. The X gives it the corrosive protection from the outside. The main difference between the two is NEMA allows the manufacturer of the product to self-test, and UL they do their own testing. So NEMA will take a UL, but UL will not take NEMA, because basically the manufacturer, so you've got an enclosure, NEMA will allow the enclosure manufacturer to test their own product unsupervised, where UL will not. You have to send it to UL. They do their own testing, and then they put their mark on it. So all of our enclosures are UL 4X rated.
So they're third-party tested, essentially.
Yes. Yes. Basically, UL is supposed to be a third party.
Yeah. That's a big deal. That can go a long way, because when you just leave the manufacturer up to their own testing, it depends on the character of the person doing it.
All right. then they may unintentionally make mistakes and put the listing on. It may not be intentional. Sometimes a third set of eyes is always good.
Absolutely.
That's kind of, goes back to our testing procedure. We function test every box. I don't care how many we build. I've got somebody putting power to every one of them and function testing it. And my rule is that the person that builds the box does not get to test the box. So I got one guy building it. I got another guy testing it. So we've always got a different set of eyes on the box.
Yeah, because people are just people at the end of the day. Yeah.
Mistakes happen, especially when you're doing production work. They're repetitious. I mean, you can only stay focused doing the same repetitious thing over and over again for so long. You're going to make a mistake. I mean, I know that you wanted to touch on this a little later, but in the industry, everything is supposed to be UL listed. Mm-hmm. So all the control panels are supposed to be UL listed, which ours are. And that is the safety factor that the industry requires for the control panel to be used in the industry.
Yeah, that's important. Important to have it be the right way. It saves a lot of problems down the road.
Then there's some panels out there today that has replacement panels that are being put in that aren't UL listed. And I'm not saying that they're not safe. They just don't go through that's how they're saving money. They don't pay the UL fees, and they don't pay for the stickers and the inspections. And so it is, as a quality installer, those are things you need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. And like you said in the beginning, what your dad told you, that your reputation will build your business. And that is so true. In marketing, we do see marketing, especially kind of modern marketing and everything's online now, does make a big difference in building people's businesses. But if you do terrible work or you're horrible with customers, no amount of marketing or networking yourself or referrals, your business is eventually going to shut down, because that reputation follows you everywhere. There's no way around that piece, and making sure that you're doing the best job you can in whatever business you're in.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, you only get one opportunity at a first impression, and your reputation is all you have. Yeah. So it's up to you to keep it up. No, other people's opinion of you have no control over that.
Yeah.
But you do have control over your reputation and your character.
That's such good advice. So remote monitoring is becoming more a standard request in the industry. How do you guys handle the remote monitoring? How is that built in to notify either maybe the maintenance contract holder, the septic company, or the homeowner that there's a problem?
Remote monitoring has been around since 2010. We used to build our own wired telemetry. I'd buy the pieces, parts, and I had some guys solder them together here in the shop. I'd test every one of them. They were wired to the phone line in the house, and basically did the same thing. If you have an alarm, it notifies somebody. What our system does is basic, very simple. It's just like a cell phone in the field. So you go out, you install the unit, you activate the unit, and they assign you a telephone number. You text commands to the phone number. You can name it. You can give it a phone, the customer's phone number. So when it texts you, it tells you who the customer is or what the address is and what their phone number is if you need to contact somebody. And then it's going to tell you, depending on how you hook it up, what the alarm is. So they'll know, okay, so-and-so's got a high water alarm. Then you can pick up the phone and dial the phone number that's on there and say, hey, you have a high water alarm, conserve water until we can get out there when we plan on building. And that's an instant. And within 10 minutes, you can do that. And we don't have a database, nothing stored in the cloud. It's just direct text to text. The unit goes off and it will send a text message out, and up to 4 phone numbers that they get notified of the alarm. We'll tell them there's a power failure. So if the neighbor goes over and turns the alarm breaker off, I'm tired of listening to this alarm. and he flips the breaker off to that says alarm, I'll fix this, then that if you got power coming from that breaker to the telemetry, it's going to notify you and say, hey, you've lost power. If the maintenance provider is on his toes and, 3 or 4 hours later, the power doesn't come back, which it will send you a text message saying when the fire is restored, then you can call the homeowner and say, hey, you out of power or not, we need to check something's going on.
So where do you see technology going in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see it moving towards every tank is connected to the cloud? Or do you think there's going to be a lot of pushback with the installers not wanting that kind of technology? How do you see that playing out in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that there are companies out there that have products that connect to the cloud, and they do a very good job. They monitor, some of them get very detailed in their monitoring. They can tell you how many amps the pump runs. They can tell you about what the pressure the compressor's putting out in the system. There's a lot of detailed information, and that information is cloud-based, and it is recorded, and it's set to trigger alarms that will email you. And I think there's a place for that. I do. The average residential system, I don't think the homeowner care. Just want to know that water is moving when they take a shower or they're washing dishes, that nothing backs up in the house. And that they want the system to work without a care. I don't think they're interested in paying for that service. I think it's wrong for the regulators to force that kind of technology onto the homeowners. But like I said, there's applications out there where, let's just say you have a nursing home on a septic system. Yeah, we need to know what that system's doing. That's a vital system. Or we have a restaurant that's on a septic system. We need that to stay running. We don't need that to back up for health reasons. So there's applications that I do think that it needs to be. It all depends on the installer. Some of the installers that grew up in this industry, their dads and their grandfathers were installers. The quality guys are going to be looking at that technology and they're going, well, that would be nice. We'd like to use it. And I know some guys that do. But in the same sense, I know some installers out there that they want to put in what's required and the homeowner wants to pay for what's required. And everything works fine. From the beginning, I still say that eyes on the job are the best means of making things happen. There's been engineers wanting to do remote systems like SCADA systems where they can change the pump rate or they can stop certain things. And I keep telling them, you want to put eyes on the ground before you start making changes, because if a sensor goes out and you're relying on that sensor to make remote changes, then the changes you make could create a problem that's not there. So you want somebody on site and to verify that the condition is what it says before you start making changes. I think that remote notification is fine, but I think the technology is headed that direction, and it's just going to cost the homeowner. I mean, at the end of the day, and that's designing the control panels, what goes through my head is that everything that we add to the control panel that is not really necessary is adding cost. It's not the precaster that's going to pay for it. It's not the installer that's going to pay for it. It's the homeowner that pays for it. So I keep that in mind. And I keep thinking that if I was buying this, what would I want in it? And how could I make it as bulletproof as I can, as cost effective as I can?
And we definitely want our end customers to have that choice. So like you said, it not being regulated in the future, that would be really important, because when the government just steps in and regulates a bunch of things, the cost always gets pushed out to the citizens.
Like I said earlier, their intentions are good, but it always comes with consequences.
Yeah. Okay, next question. When a homeowner calls a septic company saying their red light is on, what's the first thing the technician should check on an RJR panel to diagnose the issue quickly?
It depends on what panel we have. If it's a common alarm, they're just going to have to figure out, the first place to look is the pump tank. That's a visual. Pull the lid. Is the water level high? There's your alarm. Or they can go out to the compressor and say, is the compressor running? It depends on what panel it is and what it's operating, but we have some single light panels that have dual function. So if the aerator goes out, the red light will flash. And if the high water comes on, the red light's on it. So it'll give you different notifications on what alarm's going on. It calls and says, well, we got an alarm. And he has one of those panels. He can say, was it solid or is it flashing? That way he knows, okay, I've got a compressor on the truck, but I don't have a float or a pump. I need to go get something before I make that run out there.
Yeah.
So they're a little more notified. And they
Kinda
can
like
get that.
like a check engine light with codes you can
Sure.
check. It's the same idea. So if a company is servicing an older system, I mean, I know some people out in the country, they have some really old systems. I think we had a system in our last house that was like 60 years old. And then there was another one put on top of it that was kind of a mess. So I know there's lots of circumstances like that. So if a septic guy goes out, does a repair, there's a dead control box on an old system, how easy is it to swap out to an RJR panel if he has that with him on his truck? Talk to us about what that process is like of if it's just the control box is dead, the other components are fine or they're fixable and they don't need a whole new system. How easy is it to swap out that control box?
Just a matter of changing the box out, mounting it, and pulling wire. If the system's that old and everything else is working, they're back to my original thought of what do I see go wrong more than anything? Wire. So I would, if you're changing the control panel, pull new wire. You're already there. You've got some time in it. It's not going to take that much longer to pull wire. Hopefully they ran the system in conduit so you can pull wire, but just go ahead every time you replace a control panel. If you have the ability, pull wire. It's that simple. The components haven't changed since the beginning. You've got a pump and you've got float switches and you've got a compressor and you've got a pressure switch. These are things that we run in the control panel. There's other things that factor into how the unit operates. There's diffusers and there's different things in the system that could go wrong that we don't necessarily have anything to do with. Yeah. But the pressure switches and the floats and the compressors and the aerators, they've been around forever. And that's one of those things that the components are going to be the same.
So what's one simple maintenance habit that a septic company owner can teach their customers to help extend the life of their electrical components? We know don't flush flushable wipes, but beyond that, what kind of habits, is there anything that a homeowner can do? Like don't spray it with your hose, or it just doesn't really matter?
I don't think it's really going to matter because, I mean, I wouldn't sit out there and spray it for 5 minutes with a garden hose, but it's one of those deals that when it rains, it's going to get wet. So if you spray it with a garden hose while you're spraying the flower bed and it's just a passing spray, I don't think it's going to be an issue. And, that falls back to the quality of the enclosure. Everything that we use is 4X, UL4X rated. And the way they do that is that if you drill a hole in a 4X enclosure, you have to fill that hole with a 4X rated component or it derates to whatever the component is you're putting in. So like if you drill a hole in the side and you put a switch without a boot on it, you just created a type 1 box, which is indoor only. You have to replace that. You have to put a 4X rated boot over the switch for the environmental rating. So everything that we've got has that. But as far as electrical, there's nothing the homeowner really needs to do. And there again, that's why we have the alarm switches on the outside of the box. So if the alarm does go off and they call the maintenance provider and the maintenance provider says, okay, we'll go out and you'll see the switch on the side, flip to silent, and the buzzer will go off and we'll be out there within a given amount of time. And so it keeps the homeowner from opening the door of the box and getting inside and exposing yourself to the components inside.
Yeah. Save that for the professional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, kind of transitioning, your son now is co-owner in a septic company. Got to meet him a couple
Yes.
weeks ago, which was really great. I'm sure you've had plenty of good advice for him. So, kind of put on your father hat, business owner hat, and think about all the listeners that they own a septic company. Maybe they're newer or they've been in it for a while. What is the best piece of advice you could give them as they're growing their business?
Network. Find people out there that, and I say it all the time, find companies that you strive to be liked and network with those people. If you're nice and you don't pose a threat, they'll help you. They'll give you advice. Or component manufacturer, if you get an opportunity to talk to somebody, and I tell people all the time, they call and they'll help. And I'll say, well, save my phone number. Next time you have a problem with the control panel, give me a holler. I'll help you. Those are the kind of people you want to network with. It's going to save you and it's going to educate you. There's enough business out there for everybody. And
Yeah.
if you want to grow the business, network.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I really love that you said there's enough business out there for everybody. And I think what you're saying is not seeing people as a threat, but seeing how you can help them and how you can
Sure.
serve them. And when you do that and you network yourself and you're not just looking at everybody as they're out to get you, but that we can all support each other and work together, truly that leads to growth. And in probably any business, but especially septic.
Right. And that's if somebody is not friendly, if you're friendly and they're not friendly back to you, you probably don't need their advice anyway.
Right.
I mean, you want to associate yourself with people that have like-minded ideals like you do. And I tell my son all the time, you need to network with people and at least associate yourself with people out there in the industry, even though they may be a competitor. The more you've helped people, the better your reputation's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of instances too of septic companies helping each other. Maybe they're not full service, and so one's pumping and the other's installation, repairs, maintenance. Those kind of partnerships happen all the time, and just passing business back and forth to each other, or even companies, they're both installers, but one's backed up, one's got some time passing off that job. You really never know what a good conversation where, like you said, you're being friendly, you're sharing those values with somebody, you never know where it's going to take you. So it's good to always just have that sort of positive mindset of helping other people, serving other people. And it's one of those kind of things that whatever you plant ends up growing in the end.
Sure.
That's great advice. Thank you. Roy, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking time and just sharing your wisdom, sharing about your control panels. Can you tell us what's your website? Where can we find you? How can people get in touch with you?
Our website is rjrcontrols.com. And our office line is 830-693-1499. 830-693-1499. My son answers that phone. My youngest son, he's my operations manager. He's capable of answering 90% of the questions I can. He's been with us now he was in the Army and got out of the Army and came back. And so I think he's right around 5 years. He's been with us here in the company. But he grew up working in the company after school weekends. But I wanted him to go see a little bit of the world, not stay home.
Yeah, kind of grow up a little bit, learn some of those hard knock lessons in the military is a great place to learn those lessons.
Well, it's like I tell everybody, you may not figure out what you want to do in life in the military, but you'll definitely figure out what you don't want to do.
Yeah. Yes. That is true. Wonderful.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. And if there's anything we can do to help anybody out there, feel free to give us a call. I mean, text me a picture, give me a call. We'll talk about what you got.
Great. Thank you.
You bet.